Hi, this is Anim James from Uppercut Games, and welcome to the third development diary for Submerged. And today I want to continue talking about our climbing and animation system with a more in-depth look at the animation system, our animation blueprint, excuse me, and how we get Miku to climb around the buildings in the world. We'll start off by looking at a character mesh in Unreal 4 here. You see this is our main character just in her excuse me, in her idle pose. So the first thing we had to set up for this was a blueprint, and you can see we've got the event graph here. Let's maximize it. The setup, got a state machine, got a bunch of different states going on here. Here we have the anim graph. So this is what I was looking for. So this is basically the flow of everything that happens to the character, and then you've got the final animation output that you see on screen. So if we look here, we've got some, this is some a balancing sort of mini game we have, movement type. We've got the state machine here, which controls basically which state she's in, whether she's walking around, whether she's climbing, or whether she's using a vehicle. That goes into basically a full body animation, and then we do a bunch of IK that gets turned on only when you're climbing, and so this IK gets applied to the result of the full body source here, and then that goes out to the final pose. So if I go into the state machine, what I want to look at is the climbing system. So if I go into the climbing system, excuse me, there's a whole bunch of different states which represent the different climbing types. So we've got here hanging on a ledge, got standing on a ledge, climbing on a pipe, jumping on a vine, on a beam, on a ladder. And each one of these has an idle animation that basically is the base for all the other animations to be played on. So if we look at ledge hang, if I go just jump to that idle animation, this is the basis for whenever you're hanging on a ledge, all the other animations are built off this pose. They all blend out. We have a whole series of montages that blend out. She moves around and then she always returns to this pose. And whenever she's blending or transitioning to or from the hanging on a ledge state, it always goes back to this idle pose. You can see actually there's not a lot of movement in this. It's actually quite static, and that's because we experimented with different amounts of animation and found that because we're blending in and out of this pose quite a lot, quite fast, any sort of large scale movement on this idle pose actually creates a lot of snapping and weird rotations. So it actually has to be pretty static. I think you find with a game like Assassin's Creed, when he's just hanging on the wall doing nothing, it's actually pretty static as well. Okay, so you can see we have a whole series of different animations that Miku can play here. If I just type hang, there's all these are all the different montages and anim sequences that make up the hanging set. And of course Unreal's doing an auto back here in the middle of my video. We'll just quickly wait for that. So one of the first ones I wanted to look at is, just quickly close this and go into the animation sets. So we have our blueprint here and our physics asset and the skeleton. and then we have a folder with a whole bunch of subfolders, each with each animation set in them. So if we look at, go into ledge hanging, and we just turn on the filter for animation montages, you can see these are the actual montages that get played when you're moving around hanging off a ledge. So I want to look at one of the most simple ones, which is just moving left and right. So that would be, let's type in left, ledge hang left montage. Now first thing you'll notice is that the character moves on the spot. So we're not using any root motion in Submerged. Basically the code is lerping or moving the character around the level from one point to another, and the animation plays as she's moving. If you saw my previous video with the climbing system with the blueprints that create the little blocks that move, as you drag them, you move out. Each one of those blocks is 60 units in Unreal space, which is basically 60 centimeters, and that's how fast you can travel in any direction. And so all these animations are animated in 3 Studio Max to match basically a 60 centimeter movement. And you can sort of stretch them and blend them within about 30%, and it still looks fine. So if we look at the actual montage here, we have a full body slot, so that tells it to play in that full body slot we were looking at earlier in the animation graph. And then we have what are called sections in the montage. So we've got the first section, it's called move, and that's basically her moving left and right. And then we have this end section. And what the end section does is, if the player is holding down the move key to just move left continually, then it just loops this animation, and you keep moving at a fairly consistent pace. But if you just press the button once or move the joystick once, she'll play the move one unit, and then so the player doesn't stop dead and just sort of look like a robot, we've added this end section, which is, you can see, it's just basically like a little momentum shift. So it looks like she's got some weight as she keeps carrying, and I can show you that actually in practice in a minute in the game. We also have a bunch of notifiers here that are turning on and off the IK on each hand. So we have IK on each hand and each foot, and I'm turning them on and off. I'm turning the IK on and off with these notifiers here. I've got a row for each, just left hand, right hand, left foot, right foot, just so it's easy to pass when I'm moving all those notifiers around. So I can quickly show you this working in game. Have one of the first climbs that you'll do in the game here set up, which is quite a simple, just climbing up some ridges and ledges. So if I jump on the wall here, you can only move once and across one here because it's just a small traversal. But you can see when I move across, it plays the move section, and then when I stop, it plays that little end section. If I come up here to I'll just find a longer piece of the ridge to climb on. Like this one, for example. You can see it's not playing the end section. If I keep my finger down, just keep moving, and then when I stop, it plays that little, I call it a rest animation, it's just so that the character looks like she has some momentum. It looks very stiff if you don't put some sort of restitution in like that. So that's the first two sections we put into the game. Excuse me. And then the next thing we added, if I do look for jumping, for jump left, we added the idea of a start section as well. And this is basically works on the same principle. If you have, this is a move where you're jumping across a gap, and the player basically needs to have, you can see this start no skip section here. you need to have a, what we call it in animation, it's called an anticipation move. So you need to basically do something that can't be skipped at the start of a move. Then she moves, the code moves her across, and then you land and it plays. And you'll notice these sections are called no skip, not just end, which means basically under no circumstances can that be skipped by the code. So even if I keep my finger down, if I'm jumping a gap, she's always going to play the end section there and get back up. Otherwise it sort of looks ridiculous if you jump and then you suddenly can't start moving sideways without any sort of momentum or recovery. So yeah, so we have these three. So basically we have the concept of these three. We've got a start, a move, and an end, and then we have different versions of them just under different circumstances. And if I open up one of our test levels, I can show you that. Excuse me again. I can show you that in action, because there's no jumping in this level I have currently open. So I have a bit of an obstacle course set up here. And get onto, she plays the anticipation, the jump, and the recovery. So that's basically the start, the move, and the end. And that works for all of these different transitions, where you basically have some sort of shift in weight that it just looks stupid if you skip it altogether. The same thing goes for the climbing up. So you'll see she climbs up. When she jumps, there's a little start where she crouches down, and she pushes up and plays the end, which is that little bounce. And if you jump down as well, you see she has that little bounce with her pigtails bobbing. But if I keep my finger down, it skips that, and it skips that end animation altogether and just goes straight to the next transition. So it gives you sort of the best of both worlds. You get nice smooth animation when you want to move, and you get some nice looking recoveries and anticipations if you just want to play one thing. So we've also added a few different movement types since the last video blog. We've got climbing on a ladder. I haven't finished the actual animation set for this, so as you can see, she just sort of lerps around between the positions. But that's actually a pretty cool thing about the system. It means we can start building levels with these different climbing puzzles in them without actually having all the content finished. And because it's using blueprints, as I do the different animations and finish it, it just all starts turning up in the game, which works pretty nicely. And the other thing we've added is a concept of a vine, which is basically a piece you can move in any direction. You can see the debug surface here. Let's move around and sort of travel in any direction, sort of more complex, not just like linear up and down maneuvers. Yeah, so that's a look at how we're using basically Anim montages and sections. So all of the movements you see are all montages. There aren't any other than the idle, which was playing on the base here. If I go back into the blueprint, which is one of these things here. Yeah, so each of these idles for the different states is just a raw animation, and then everything that gets played during the movement is all a montage. And I can quickly show you how we're storing that data. If I look at our character blueprint, it's actually quite a massive list of, going here to the defaults and the climbing. See, each transition has an entry, and then there's a montage assigned to it. So I've got idle. Idle is basically standing, walking around. So you've got idle up to ledge, hang. You've got idle down to ledge, hang. Idle down to ridge, hang. And there's literally a couple hundreds of these these entries. You can see the ones I haven't done yet, they all exist, so you can still do that maneuver, but it won't play the animation until I create the animations in Max and import them, and then I just plug them in here and it all starts, and she starts moving around and animating. So you can see I've got a fair bit of work left to do, but it's actually starting to come together and work really well. Okay, I think that's the end of this look at animation montages and sections and the animation blueprint. I hope that was useful, and I'll see you again for the next developer diary. Bye.